Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into one of the most fascinating corporate turnaround and adaptation stories of the modern era. Today, we're unpacking exactly how Cadbury transformed itself from a highly expensive foreign luxury item into a deeply rooted Indian cultural phenomenon. I mean, this isn't just a simple story about chocolate. It's an absolute masterclass in supply chain resilience, brilliant emotional marketing, and profound cultural integration. Right out of the gate, let's talk about the payoff. $5.7 billion. That is Cadbury's current estimated brand value in India today. It cements their place as a massive global powerhouse and the completely undisputed leader in the Indian market. But to really understand the gravity of this dominance, we have to pull back the curtain and travel back to 1948. Because back then, achieving this kind of success wasn't just difficult, it bordered on the literal impossible. I want you to imagine trying to build a chocolate empire in post-independence India. You've got two massive, glaring problems. First, milk production was so remarkably low across the country that getting enough basic milk for young children was a huge challenge. Sparing it to make candy? Basically unthinkable. And the second problem? Cocoa. It simply wasn't grown in India at all. Not a single farm. So how do you make milk chocolate with no milk and no cocoa? Well, this existential logistical nightmare forced Cadbury to completely rebuild their supply chain from scratch. Tracking their localization journey is absolutely fascinating. In 1948, every single ingredient had to be imported, which was entirely financially unsustainable. Going into the 1950s, they barely survived by swapping fresh milk for milk powder, just to keep the factory machines running. But then came the 1965 masterstroke. Cadbury realized that the climate in South India was actually perfect for growing cocoa. So they didn't just buy farms. They actively taught local farmers across Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh exactly how to cultivate it. And as luck would have it, by the time the 1970s White Revolution boomed, which turned India into a massive global milk producer, Cadbury was perfectly positioned to take advantage. Now you might be wondering, what did this mean for the business? Well, this localization had a massive economic payoff. By successfully relying on Indian cocoa farms and tapping into that booming local milk production, Cadbury finally shattered the price barrier. They completely removed their reliance on expensive foreign imports, which drastically lowered their overall production costs. And this was the exact turning point. This is when chocolate transitioned from being a prohibitive luxury reserved only for the wealthy into a mass-market product that the average Indian could finally afford. But here's the thing, solving the supply chain was really only half the battle. Initially, Cadbury logically targeted children, right? Because kids adopt new tastes quickly. And sure, it worked at first. But they soon hit a massive growth ceiling. Kids grow up. And suddenly, eating a chocolate bar felt childish to a huge portion of the population. So, to become a lifelong Indian staple, Cadbury realized they had to shift their entire emotional advertising strategy. They needed a way to convince adults that it was perfectly fine, even cool, to keep their inner child alive. And that realization birthed the legendary 1994 TV campaign, Asli Swad Zindagiga, or The Real Taste of Life. If you were around then, you probably remember the iconic ad. It featured a young woman joyfully eating a dairy milk bar in the stands of a cricket match, and when her boyfriend hits the winning run, she spontaneously dances onto the field. This wasn't just a catchy commercial, it was a profound psychological shift for the consumer. It tapped straight into adult nostalgia and explicitly granted grown-ups cultural permission to just enjoy chocolate freely. This emotional masterstroke permanently shifted consumer habits toward chocolate, cementing dairy milk for all ages and pushing their market share to a commanding 69%. Everything was going perfectly, but just when they seemed invincible, absolute disaster struck. In 2003, worms were discovered in dairy milk bars in Maharashtra. The news spread like wildfire. I mean, imagine the absolute panic. Parents, who are the primary gatekeepers of trust for any household brand, instantly banned their kids from eating it. The sentiment plummeted overnight, and as a direct result, Cadbury's net profits cratered by a terrifying 37%. The immediate fallout was a total collapse. Their undisputed market dominance vanished in a flash, dropping from 69% down to 53%. But why was the drop so severe? Well, Cadbury's initial PR stance was defensive. They tried to explain away the issue, blaming poor storage by local retailers. But a defensive public relations strategy during a severe safety crisis only breeds more suspicion. When it comes to their kids' safety, parents don't want excuses. The public wasn't buying it, and Cadbury was bleeding consumer trust by the second. To survive, they had to throw out the defensive playbook entirely. and transitioned to hyper-proactive communication. They needed to win back the parents. Step 1, rebuild that brand sentiment. They brought in Bollywood megastar Amitabh Bachchan. By utilizing his authoritative, universally trusted fatherly presence, they launched the New Taste of Trust campaign. But, and this is crucial, Step 2 meant they didn't just use empty PR. They backed it up. They fundamentally upgraded their manufacturing, introducing tamper-proof double-layer aluminum packaging, providing an undeniable physical safety guarantee to back up their new messaging. And the result? 70%. Within just 2 years, this incredible strategy of complete transparency and genuine physical safety upgrades worked a miracle. Their market share rocketed back up to 70%, actually surpassing their pre-crisis levels. Think about that. By 2005, a brand literally associated with pest infestations just 24 months prior had officially been voted Mumbai's #1 most trusted brand. It truly goes down as one of the greatest corporate recovery stories in history. Yet, surviving a crisis isn't exactly the same as achieving long-term cultural integration. Cadbury still faced their final, ultimate hurdle: India's centuries-old traditional sweets, the mithai, like laddu and barfi. These sweets were deeply ingrained in every single local celebration, every festival, every family milestone. Cadbury needed to figure out how to position their premium, heavily packaged celebrations boxes not just as a snack, but as a worthy, aspirational alternative to this deeply rooted cultural heritage of gifting. To pull this off, they deployed what is arguably their most legendary campaign slogan ever, Kuch Meeta Ho Jaye, which translates to "let's have something sweet." Now, originally, they actually tried using this to target small everyday moments, like passing an exam or getting your first paycheck. But Indians just weren't ready to drop traditional mithai for small daily wins. So Cadbury pivoted. They decided to go big and subtly rebrand those traditional, massive sweet gifting moments into modern chocolate occasions. They completely abandoned the small moments and aimed directly at the giants of the Indian cultural calendar. They embedded their beautifully packaged celebrations boxes directly into Diwali gifting. They positioned chocolate as the modern, hygienic, and luxurious exchange for a brother and sister during Raksha Bandhan. They even started promoting it as a premium luxury gift for weddings. By heavily pivoting their advertising toward these major cultural festivals, they essentially hijacked the traditional gifting space, offering a modern twist on an ancient practice. And this brilliant cultural hijacking, it drove a massive 29% surge in sales by 2010. They hadn't just sold more chocolate, they had successfully changed consumer habits on a national scale. This massive success secured their legacy as an unshakable market leader, standing incredibly strong just prior to their major global acquisition by Kraft Foods. They had officially, undeniably, woven themselves into the fabric of Indian joy. So, the next time you find yourself handing over a beautifully wrapped box of Cadbury during a festival, I want you to ask yourself a question. Are you just gifting a simple piece of chocolate, or are you actively participating in a masterclass of cultural adaptation and corporate resilience? From teaching farmers to plant cocoa seeds in Kerala, to bouncing back from absolute PR disaster, to completely redefining what it means to share something sweet. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.